Welcome to Let's Talk Ball. I'm Thad Brown along with Carl Jones. Every week we break down the X's and the O's, spend hours poring over the All-22, examining what we think the Bills did right, wrong, and or indifferent. This week we're talking Bills and Colts. And Carl, you mentioned it before the show started. Josh Allen had 2 interceptions in this game. I saw on ESPN today, they were like, what was wrong with Josh Allen? As you said before the show, a lot of times it's not as good as it looks or as bad as it looks on Sunday when you watch the game.
Yeah, when you're watching the games on Sunday, you're like, oh, here we go, Josh again. These interceptions, like we were doing so good in the first month of the year. What's going on? All right, when you watch it back a little bit, the first interception, he got bumped, and obviously that happens playing the quarterback position, but that's the context of that. And then the second one, sure, it was a mistake, but that's also objectively a really good nickel cornerback, a top 3 guy in the NFL, and Kenny Moore just making a phenomenal play. Josh Allen made some, once again, only plays that maybe he and other 5 quarterbacks on this planet can make. The dot to Dawson Knox down the field, obviously the Matt Collins play, even the scramble, I believe in the fourth quarter where he was able to just say, you know what, forget this. Like, we're backed up. We just got a penalty. I'm going to take off anyways. Those were just some examples of Josh Allen putting on the cape a little bit, even if the cape was a little battered and bruised in the first half.
See, the thing was, beyond outside the interceptions, there were very few mistakes. I've watched a lot of Josh Allen games where he's had no interceptions, but you're like, wow, that I don't know what he's thinking there. That's not a smart quarterback play. I mean, he had another one where I thought that the Khalil Shakir screen pass, they went for 30. That looks like an adjustment of Josh reading a blitz at the line, and throwing that screen was the perfect answer in that situation for the blitz. So he was winning with his mind. He was winning with his arm. You talk about the Knox throw. Outside of the 2 interceptions, I thought the rest of the game was really clean. And when you have that kind of game where you only have 2 mistakes, even if those 2 mistakes are interceptions, I think you're going to win a lot of those games. And even on the Kenny Moore one, you know, that was the same play the Bills succeeded on the very first snap of the game where they caught the Colts kind of sleeping with the defensive back too far inside. Credit to Indy for, you know, going to the film and saying, hey, you know what? They got us. This is what our adjustment's going to be. And then they got Buffalo back. That's how professional football works. I want to say that the run game for the Bills in this game wasn't as good as maybe it's been the last few weeks. My reaction Sunday was Joe Brady's gone to the well too often, too many zone runs, not enough creativity. Watching it back, I still think we can have a discussion about that. Not that we're going to in this broadcast. That's a thing that's on the table. But it was pretty clear the thing that caused the Bills the most problem in this run game, or in the run game, was the fact that DeVorest Buckner and Grover Stewart are really good defensive tackles. David Edwards had himself a bad day at the office, dealing with 99 all game. Those 2 guys can just play.
I know coming into the game, there were a lot of people who were like, oh, the Colts run D is terrible. Well, I hate to break it to you, Defoe, DeForest Buckner, missed most of the games this year. He's been out dealing with an injury. And then Grover Stewart was all by his lonesome. Now that they got those 2 monsters next to each other, I know y'all remember Sunday Night Football, what they did to the Vikings. I think they combined for like 3.5 sacks. 1 sack led to a touchdown. Those 2 are 2 of the best interior tandems in football. And that was probably a large reason why the Bills struggled on early downs trying to run the rock. And then, like you said, poor David Edwards, he's going to have some nightmares about 99 going forward.
The Colts also did put more defensive players in the box than we've seen against the Bills a lot this year. Most of the time, the Bills have a numbers advantage in the box. And when I say advantage, if you're blocking 7-on-7, that's big time advantage offense. And the Bills have had that, I don't know, it feels like 80 to 90% of the snaps this year. The Colts made more of an effort to put more guys in the box. And you know what? When you have more defensive players there, it's easier to play defense. Shocker. So all those things combined don't make me that concerned. Big picture about where the Bills run game is at. Again, I want to see Joe Brady come up with some different stuff. I wonder if the Chiefs, it seemed like the Broncos, and we'll talk about the Chiefs in a little bit here. It seemed like the Broncos did a better job beating the Chiefs around the outside. The Bills don't run that stuff. You know, they run tackles and pulls and, zone runs that cut back all the time. They don't go around the edge. Maybe there might have to be some different stuff in this game. But one thing that you pointed out, and I saw this too, James Cook has been a little bit of a different runner this year. This is a guy that I criticized as a rookie because he goes down too easy. In this game in particular, that was not the case, was it?
He had a couple violent runs where you're like, we saw it over the past few weeks or so, and you're like, okay, maybe it's a one-off. I know you can think of the touchdown run. I believe that was the Titans where the guy's helmet popped off. And you're like, okay. I didn't know you had that in your toolbox.
That was Seattle, by the way.
Seattle, thank you. The old cliche, is it a feature or is it a bug? I don't think it's a bug anymore. I think this is a legit feature of his game. Am I saying he's, I don't know, Marshawn Lynch running a rock and like don't get in his way, or Derrick Henry? No, I'm not saying that. But for a guy with his physical profile and his style of game, having that, even if it's, I don't know, a C plus B minus thing, is so beneficial for a guy who we know when he's in space can make things happen. So when he's in between the tackles and he can turn a 3-yard rush into 8, that helps the Bills stay on schedule on offense.
Simple as saying you're adding tools to the tool belt. You know, if you can get a guy who can bounce off a few tackles, who can stay on his feet. And I think people think of tough running backs as someone who's trucking a DB, just running them over. It doesn't have to be that, though. It can just be, can you handle the contact without going down? As a rookie, he couldn't. As a rookie, when anybody would get near him, get a piece of him, he was down. In this game, there were multiple plays where, yeah, the Colts might have gotten a good shot on him, but he still stayed on his feet and then was able to progress forward. And that is 100% an improvement this year. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. I want to start out with, let's go right back to the run D. You know, this has been an issue all year. And I think, you know, we'll go back to never as bad as it looks, never as good as it looks. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor had 100 yards in the first half, and there were some problems, which has been the theme for this Bills run defense. But I thought the defensive tackle play, which I think has been the primary issue on the run D, was better in this game. Daquan Jones had a couple wins, Ed Oliver a little more active, and the depth guys were okay. Jordan Phillips and Quentin Jefferson had an impact game one. Austin Johnson was better in this game. I don't think this Bills run D is going to get to top half at all this year. This is going to be an issue. But if the run D can be not Baltimore level destructive, then you can still win games with it like the Bills did against the Colts.
And you talk about the guys up front. A guy who helped out a little bit in that regard, well, he helped out in a lot of things in that regard Sunday, is Taron Johnson. Obviously, the first play of the game, phenomenal play, which is funny. I watched it live, and I'm like, Joe Flacco, what are you doing? But then I broke the play down on my X for you guys can go watch that right now, where that was actually Taron. He said it after the game where he saw the play earlier in the year and then corrected his own mistake. That play actually was the Dolphins game in the fourth quarter the previous week. So literally, he went back into the film this past week and said, if I see it again, it's cookies. And he took it back to the house. Also, a good block by Rasul Douglas as well. But Taron Johnson, once again, was flying everywhere. He hit the quarterback. He was fitting run gaps. I don't know if he'll be an all-pro based off the games that he missed, but that was certainly an all-pro performance he put together Sunday.
I want to ask you about the interception because I know Taron said, and maybe you can tell me what the play was, or we'll talk about the play a little bit to kind of explain it. But when Taron drops back, there is a receiver out wide, I think Alec Pierce, who's wide open, who looks like that should be Taron's man. And if I'm Joe Flacco and I've seen a bazillion throws in the NFL to where I know what coverages are going to look like, when I see my guy go outside, I know that Taron Johnson, his responsibility is likely to go outside. That's why I'm making that throw, because I don't expect Taron to be there. So did Taron drop off a coverage, or did Flacco read it wrong, or am I reading it wrong? Because Taron said later that, and even Bobby Babbitt said that it wasn't so much he came off of coverage, he just played his technique better. To me, it looks like he's in the wrong spot, but smartly so, knowing where the ball is going to be.
So in order to understand that play, you got to watch the Dolphins play. So to give you guys a picture at home, there are 3 receivers in front of Taron Johnson. He's on the trip side of the field. The Dolphins game, the most innermost receiver, the tight end, which was also the tight end in the Colts as well, runs a little bit of a hitch/out. And Taron in the Dolphins game jumped it. And when he jumped it, Tua Tagovailoa threw it right behind him. It was in the last drive of the game where Tyreek Hill got that 20-yard catch. With the very next week, and you can clearly tell the Colts saw that concept and said, bam, we're going right at 7. Because they run the same exact concept where it is a different coverage by the defense. But once again, trips concept, speed at 2, tight end at 3. They're thinking if we can get him, that tight end to come out again, Taron's going to jump it. We'll throw it right behind him. Well, clearly that's not what happened, because Taron, as in that hook curl spot, you don't really have a responsibility outside of just reading the quarterback's eyes. And Taron just got a little overzealous against Miami, and he said, let me just play my technique against the Colts. And I'm sure all week in practice, Joe Flacco said, I'm going to Josh Downs. I'm going to Josh Downs. I'm going to Josh Downs. He went to Josh Downs, but unfortunately 7 was in between them.
It wasn't the only time in the game where I thought Flacco read something too fast to his own detriment. But just to finish up the discussion with that, if that's how the hook defender is supposed to play there, aren't you giving up a first down to the guy outside? Because Pierce has got, 5 to 10 yards of space to the sideline with the deep safety in this case, not that he's a safety, but Benford's playing that role. He's going down with the clear out guy, the downs guy who's going straight down the field. You're going to get 12, 15 yards with that sideline route. So if the coverage is supposed to be Taryn Reed and the quarterback, aren't you giving up a play to the outside there?
I remember a coach telling me, especially on first down, there's no perfect coverage. We're going to take away something, and we dare the quarterback to be perfect every play. Because obviously it's never as clean as cutting that. There are certain coverages that you can run that take away certain stuff. But for what the Colts called, and for how Taryn played that, sure, if they didn't prep that, Joe Flacco might hit the furthest receiver. But since they prepped it all week for Taryn not to be there, I don't care Alec Pierce is open. Josh Downs is supposed to be.
That makes sense. That's good stuff, man. I appreciate that. All right, let's from one guy who had a really great game to another. Greg Rousseau was really, really good in this game. Everybody saw the sack fumble, which really wasn't even maybe in his top 5 of best plays in the game. That's just him being long, which is a huge advantage. But he was very good in the run game. Had a stop on a 3rd and short, where he just literally took the tackle and dragged him into the middle of the field and blocked the run, took the run out. And he had multiple other pressures. The Colts had a rookie tackle, Matt Gonsalves, who was Goncalves, I think his name is, who played a lot of this game at left tackle. And Rousseau, when he went to the right side, which wasn't a lot, really made a lot of effort there to cause him all kinds of problems. In the pass game, we talked about Taryn a little bit. I did think that outside of Taryn, the outside corners, Rasul Douglas and Christian Benford, did not have a great game. This is based on the bar they've already set. Adonai Mitchell, who I think is a really good route runner. I was surprised how smooth he was getting to outs, moving around. Alec Pierce did a good job. There was a lot of stuff the Colts could throw. I remember the media after the game, we all talked about why did the Colts only run it 4 times in the second half? When you watch the film back, you see how open everybody is. I'm wondering why they ran it that many times. But one point you wanted to talk about is that this particular style of offense is not something the Bills have seen a lot so far, but they might see it a lot going forward.
Yeah, just a normal quarterback who can attack the ball down the field, especially outside the numbers. I want to preface it by saying I think Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas are one of the best duos, and they include the safeties in there as well.
Agreed.
The secondary is not an issue for the Bills, but they haven't really seen a lot of traditional drop back passers who can effectively throw the ball down the field. Geno Smith is one, but no DK Metcalf, but that's not the Bills' fault. They did play Aaron Rodgers, who almost threw for 300, and I think that was the most yards he had all year. And that was once again a quarterback who can hit all targets in all areas of the field. So going forward, when you do see a Patrick Mahomes, when you do see a Jared Goff, when you do see a Brock Purdy, and then a Matthew Stafford, all those guys can hit every blade of grass. I do want to see how the Bills cornerbacks and secondary in particular go up against these type of quarterbacks.
That was Aaron Rodgers' biggest game of the year, 294. To be fair, he had a Hail Mary in there, which has nothing to do with any of the stuff we're talking about here. But the point still stands. Aaron Rodgers threw for 250, and the Bills haven't seen, a ton of quarterbacks in that way. They did throttle Trevor Lawrence for what it's worth. He's not maybe quite that guy, but I think a fairly similar quarterback.
Sure, yeah.
And again, bottom line, I didn't think those corners played well in this game. And I pointed out because the Colts didn't have Michael Pittman. Yeah. Right. And still, were really effective in the pass game with Joe Ancient Flacco. Not a big time concern, but something that still stood out.
Definitely watching going forward.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of going forward, let's talk about this Chiefs game, because Colts, whatever, we knew how that was going to go. This is obviously the big one. I want to start when the Chiefs have the ball. One thing the Chiefs do a lot of this year is throw the backside of the backfield because, they don't have a lot of downfield options. Before DeAndre Hopkins and after Rashee Rice got hurt, it was Xavier Worthy and Prey. Now, look, obviously, Travis Kelce can still get it done. I think their tight ends as a group, depth-wise, are a little bit underrated. But the Bills have had trouble. You go back to the Houston game, Ogunbowale just killed them. Obviously in this game, they had the Goodson touchdown. By the way, the Colts had another Goodson leak out that would have gone for a touchdown, a 40-yarder, if it had connected. So running backs out of the backfield have been an issue. And I think in the way that NFL teams play defense now, it has to be an issue because everybody's dropping too deep and preventing the big play. Of course, the running back is available. So if the Chiefs are going to do this all day, how do the Bills combat it in this game, especially with a quarterback that's going to find all the angles and be ready for anything you want to throw at him?
That's going to be something to definitely watch from a Chiefs perspective. And then also staying on the Chiefs offense, I know the narrative this year is that the Chiefs offense is trash. Oh my gosh. They're not putting up the 40 points they used to put back in the Tyreek Hill days. One, they haven't been that offense since Tyreek Hill. That's first and foremost. And then secondly, they're just boring. Like, that's just simple as it is. They lead the NFL in 10-play drives, 26 of them this year. Patrick Mahomes, your quarterback, and that's what's going on. But hey, they have 4 receivers on IR. Well, 3, and then Juju Smith-Schuster has been out as well. So that has something to do with it. And then also their tackles haven't really been able to hold up in pass protection or in the run fits in general. So they haven't been able to generate explosive plays in general. But to give you an example of how I know the offense is still good, they convert 52% of their third downs. That is 54% was the number going into last week. That was the best since 2011. So you aren't that historically good of a team on third down if you're bad. They just wait till third down to make some plays. That's all it is.
I think they said in the broadcast too that the Chiefs have either the least or one of the least or lowest numbers of yards to go on third down in the league. So, the Chiefs, when you can have 3rd and 4 all the time and you have Travis Kelce and Mahomes, you're going to convert a lot of those, and Andy Reid for that matter. So although third down, people are going to talk about, look how good the Chiefs are. And let me ask you real quick, by the way, is that 54%? Is that the best over a full season? In other words, you're comparing it to everybody else who had to play through Thanksgiving in December and January for that number too?
Correct.
So ostensibly that number is probably going to go down because when the weather gets worse, the offense gets a little worse in general.
Well, yeah, it's already dropped to 52%.
Exactly. So, all right. So it's probably, regardless though, the point still stands. They're a really, really good third down offense. And I think a big part of that is because they're good enough on first and second down to make third down manageable. To your point on the tackles, Juwan Taylor is the guy we always know. I mean, people are going to lose their minds because it's going to look like he's jumping offside all the time or false starting all the time. It ain't like, folks, you can get mad about that. They ain't calling it. Just get used to that. But he's not a great offensive tackle. There's a reason why it looks like he's jumping all the time, because he's got to get out there to defend most edges, and Von Miller and Greg Rousseau are good enough to take advantage of bad tackles. Then they don't know what they're doing at left tackle right now. So to me, I think a big key for this game is the Bills being able to get some pressure off the edge, in part too, because you can't count on them to get pressure up the middle. Daquan Jones and Elver have not been those guys enough this year. So I think getting stuff on the edge is going to be a big part of this, but the Chiefs are probably going to do what they do, which is score between 20 and 24 points, right? I mean, I don't feel like the Bills are going to be good enough, short of multiple turnovers, to totally shut Kansas City down, even as unimposing or as boring as you put it, as the Chiefs have looked on offense this year.
Yeah, I know last week they looked rough. Denver has a really, really good defense.
I watched that game too, and I spent the whole game thinking, well, yeah, Buffalo ain't doing this. Yeah, well, Buffalo ain't doing this. Buffalo's defense is good, but they're not this good.
Yeah, when you have a Patrick Surtain who you can literally say, hey, just guard him and just play 10 on 10, it allows you to do some funky stuff on defense. But I do want to go on the other side of the ball really fast about the Bills offense up against the Chiefs defense. And we touched on it off air a little bit. Chris Jones is obviously elite, as good as it gets as a defensive tackle, like an S-tier guy. But outside of him, they've really struggled to get to the passer, which I think will be something to watch in this game, because the Bills generally have been a top 5-ish O-line, especially defending like in the past. Obviously, the Ravens and Texans games stick out. But regardless, if the Chiefs can't win with 4, they're down at corner right now because of Jalen Watson breaking his leg or ankle, whatever it was. So one-on-one opportunities, if Amari Cooper plays, I think that is something that the Bills are going to watch.
Well, the Broncos seem to move the ball through the air much easier than you'd expect for a team that's rolling out Devon Vele and LeJordan Humphrey at receiver. So, yeah, I agree with you, because I rewatched, going back after the Colts game, my thought was, wow, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm just going to blitz all day with 6, because the Bills receivers, if the Bills don't have Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper for this game, the guys they have left, and Dalton Kincaid, the guys they have left do not separate. They just won't. So if you're the Chiefs, I'm going to drop 5 guys back, play one-on-one all day, and just blitz 6. But then watching the Broncos game, the Broncos got separation. The Broncos got receivers open. So the Chiefs will not be able to do that. So again, as much as the Chiefs defense has been really good, and, it feels like we're going to spend this whole broadcast kind of taking them down, they're still a really good D, but I don't think they're nearly as good as they seem to be. They don't get a lot of sacks, bottom 5 in that category. They don't force a ton of turnovers, but they generally never do. They are really good against the run. I think they're second or third yards per carry allowed, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But in the passing game, I think there will be opportunities for the Bills to move the ball, and they might have to, because again, you start with Chris Jones at the tackle spot, and everything else that the Chiefs have already proven. Mike Dana, who just came back off the injured list, he's also a really good guy on the inside. I think they will probably be able to create problems for the Bills run game, especially the Bills run game that really hasn't been dominant the last couple of weeks. They went for 135 against the Colts, but 50 of that was Josh Allen. So to me, when the Bills have the ball, they're gonna have to win this with Josh Allen throwing it, even if they don't have any of their main guys at receiver.
I agree with that 130%. People are going to see that no Keon Coleman, a banged up Amari Cooper, that's ground and pounded. Actually, that plays right into the Chiefs' strengths because the Chiefs have one of the best front sevens in football in terms of weird, mucky body types. I mean, Leo Chenal, I don't know if he's a D tackle, DN, or linebacker, but he lined up at all three. Mike Dana is also a versatile guy. They have a bunch of guys who could do funky stuff in the front seven. So that plays right into your hands if you want to do 12 personnel, 13 personnel stuff. Although the Bills may be forced to go wide a lot, 11 personnel, because of Dalton Kincaid, but that's something that we won't find out until later on in the week. But yeah, I think you just let Josh Allen play point guard this game and see how far that can take you.
Yeah, and you might have to do the same thing on the Chiefs side. Well, I think the Chiefs, especially if they get Isaiah Pacheco back, I think they'll want to go on the ground, because they'll see that the Bills are vulnerable there. They don't want to have to, try and force the ball down the field. DeAndre Hopkins opens up some avenues for them. But the Chiefs, I think, for their game plan is going to be keep it on the ground, 10-play drives. We're going to give Josh Allen 7 possessions at most and try and win it that way. The Chiefs have had the mojo this year, so we'll see how much that matters. It's funny that in the regular season, the Bills have dominated this series, and in the playoffs, it's been the other way. There's so many things we can talk about with this game. It's going to be a lot of fun. But my favorite part of it is always the fact that these teams know each other so well. You can see it on the field that the wheels are turning. We've done this before. They've done this before. Let's try this now. It's going to be one of those classic NFL matchups that I thoroughly enjoy.
I'm right with you.
All right. As always, you can watch Let's Talk Ball at rochesterfirst.com and on WIVB.com. You can find it at Rochester First by clicking on the sports tab, and underneath you can click on 8 Sports Extra. We're also on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast. Next week, Bills and Chiefs. Guessing we're going to have a couple things to say about how that one goes. Should be a good time. For Carl Jones, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you next week.